Call to order our Monday, April 7th Community Preservation Committee meeting. The first order of business is to welcome our new member. Hi, Diane. Welcome.
Thank you
We're
very
happy to
much.
have you with us.
I'm thrilled to be here. Thank you.
And we have name tags, so I suspect you can figure out who we are. We don't probably need to go around the circle. So I'd say we jump right into the meat of tonight, our community forum and public hearing, but we have a very handsome public of three. But we can begin if there are folks following along at home who'd like to hear our presentation. Yes, we can open our public hearing. And the first part of that is a presentation by our Vice Chair.
Thank you. All right. Make that full.
I'm not sure why it's not going full screen.
Oh, even in presentation mode on the bottom? Yeah.
We did that, but
Yeah.
with the PowerPoint porting into Google Meet, it doesn't seem to. It shows up on her screen, but not on the presented screen.
Could try that.
All right. You want to just zoom in a little and close the menu on the top? Awesome. Thank you.
There we go.
Oh, that's much better. All right. Well, welcome to the public forum. This is our annual review of annual discussion to inform the public about Community Preservation Act, about the Community Preservation Committee, which is who we are, and then ultimately to hear from you, the public, relative to community needs, opportunities, and resources in Shrewsbury relative to the items, to the 4 pillars that drive CPA, which we'll get to now. So if we go to the next slide, please. So in our agenda for tonight, we're going to be going over the following. We're going to do an introduction to CPA. We're going to talk about the history of CPA in Shrewsbury, finances that drive CPA here in Shrewsbury, what kinds of projects can be funded by CPA, how to request project funding, what you can do as a member of the public, and then obviously the public forum to hear from you. Next slide, please. So what is CPA? CPA is a Community Preservation Act, which was a Massachusetts law that was enacted in 2000. And CPA allows communities who adopt it to establish funds dedicated specifically for 4 areas: outdoor recreation, open space, historic preservation, and community housing. Next slide. Across Massachusetts, 200 communities have adopted it, including our neighbors, Boylston, Grafton, Northborough, and West Boylston, Westborough, and Worcester. And Shrewsbury enacted it in 2020. And so what CPA can fund is, this matrix will be a popular matrix that we'll talk about as we go into different sections here, but I'll just say that we have the 4 pillars that I talked about earlier, which is open space, recreation, historic preservation, community housing, and along with that is the action verbs about projects that cover CPA, which is either acquiring open space or creating it, preserving it, supporting it, or rehabilitating and or restoring it. And the intersection between those areas plus those project verbs will tell you where something is allowable or not allowable. And we'll cover that each slice as we get into the presentation. Next slide, please. So now just a brief history about CPA in Shrewsbury. So town meeting approved raising the ballot question in August 2020, and then Shrewsbury voters adopted it at the ballot box in November, in 2020 with a surcharge put on the real estate tax bill of 1%. And that includes allowable exemptions that were included in the passage of that vote, which is noted at the bottom. And then also the Community Preservation Committee, this committee, was established in 2021 to oversee CPA funds. Next slide. So about the committee itself, we are a 9-member committee established by the Select Board. And there are 5 members that represent, that are statutory, and those cover areas such as Conservation Commission, Historic Commission, Housing Authority, Parks and Cemetery Commission, and the Planning Board. And then there are 4 at-large members as well. And then we're supported by the Planning and Economic Development Department, and which Chris McGoldrick and Emma O'Connor are here as well, representing that group. So CPC conducts an annual needs assessment for community preservation and for updating its community preservation plan. This meeting here tonight is part of that process to help us understand what are the community preservation needs in Shrewsbury, and then that gets funneled back into the community preservation plan, which we'll be talking about in the next few meetings as we update that on an annual basis. And that in turn will drive us in hearing your project proposals come the fall and how they align to the plan itself. And so CPC as well also reviews project applications and recommends eligible priority projects to town meeting. And town meeting has the ultimate say in terms of whether a project is approved for funding or not. Next slide, please. So briefly talk about finances. So CPA has 2 funding sources. The primary driver is the annual tax surcharge. That's the 1% that's put onto your tax bill. And for the fiscal year of 25, which we're currently in and closes out in June, it was projected at the beginning of the fiscal year that we would be raising $901,000. And as well, there's a pot of money that comes back from the state, and it's a variable match. And that was estimated at $163,000 at the beginning of this year. That would be coming back to Shrewsbury just for adopting CPA. And that was the incentive for communities to adopt CPA. So all in all, we're looking at $1 million a year approximately, which is pretty sizable when we talk about projects that could not have been funded any other way, right? I think the voters knew that and said that's why they said yes to adopting CPA, because these projects, again, the four areas, community housing, open space, outdoor recreation, and historic preservation, were historically not funded or underfunded. Okay, thank you. Next slide. Briefly about how we allocate monies. The CPA legislation does have requirements in terms of how we put money into specific buckets. And for the purposes of open space and recreation, those 2 things are combined into one. This is just the way the legislation is created. And so they're saying you need to allocate at least 10% of your annual budget towards that combined area, another minimum 10% towards historic preservation, and another minimum 10% to community housing. For the operations of the committee itself, the CPC is allowed to have an up to 5% annual budget for administrative expenses, which if we reserve something in that space and we don't use it, the money does go back into the wider untapped reserve for the CPC itself. But the key message here is that all monies raised for CPA stay in CPA. So if something's not spent, it just stays within CPA bucket, and it does not get mixed in with the municipal budget. Just want to be clear about that, okay? It is a separate funding source, okay? Next slide. All right, so let's finally get into what can you do with CPA monies. If you go into the next slide, we're going to focus in on the open space category. And here you can see that open space, just looking at the check boxes, we can acquire open space, we can create open space, we can preserve it, and then we can rehabilitate or restore it. But the asterisk there for that space is that the open space would have had to have been purchased by CPA funds, again, for the rehab and the restore section. Okay, move on. So how is open space defined by Community Preservation Act? And these are just nouns that are very specific to the legislation. Of course, it's not limited to them, but just things to keep in mind. So we can protect streams and fields and forest lands and existing and future well fields. Think of the water, where our wells are in town, and if we wanted to make sure that there was a buffer around those wells, that this is an opportunity to use CPA monies to purchase those lands, so we can protect our wellheads, protecting our aquifers and rate charge areas, land to protect scenic views, and obviously land for recreation use as well. Next slide. And so here's, because CPA has been adopted in Shrewsbury for a few years now, we have a number of projects that have been recommended by CPC and approved by town meeting. Here is a highlight of just two of those projects that have been approved in Shrewsbury. One, the top here was 3 parcels. They were off Lake Street and Grove Street in the southern part of Shrewsbury. And that was to be part of a larger network, to have trails going from Lake Street Park, and it will allow you to traverse all the way down to Camp One again off of 140. So that was a great opportunity where, long-time Shrewsbury resident wanted to make sure that these parcels became part of the fabric of Shrewsbury in terms of open space and recreation. So that was a great opportunity to leverage their generosity to bring that opportunity to our town to purchase that property. The next one here was leveraging an existing recreational space, open space, recreation, passive recreation, and that's Camp One again, also on 140 in the southern part of town. There, we had underutilized that space because parking was terrible in that area, and in order to make that more usable, this project was to fund a parking spaces, so that you can leverage the trail network much better. It also allowed for a future project, which was also approved, which was for an accessible trail, an all-inclusive trail. All right, move on to the next slide, please. We're going to get into recreation, and specifically this is outdoor recreation. There's a limitation on using CPA monies. You cannot use CPA monies for stadiums or enclosed structures. We're looking at it's for outdoor recreation and structures that support outdoor recreation. So there we can acquire, we can create, we can preserve, or we can rehabilitate and or restore. And so we go to the next slide, we'll look at some examples, with the definitions. Again, this is not limited to these words, but these are some examples. So we can think of outdoor athletic fields, we can think trails, playgrounds, non-commercial youth and adult sports, parks, and land for community gardens. Again, here's a couple of sample projects that were approved in the past in Shrewsbury. First, Dean Park basketball court restoration. Those fields had been, those courts had been deteriorating for quite some time, and this project was to completely reconstruct them, a new fencing, new surface, everything. So that was, it was completed. Looks great. Highly encourage folks that are in Dean Park to leverage that resource that's been completed. The next one here is, on the bottom here was a town-wide playground assessment, and that was to look at all the playgrounds in Shrewsbury and to take a look at, see where do we have deficiencies in terms of the quality and the safety of those playgrounds, and to be able to rank them, say what are the needs to be able to bring that back up to a usable state, a better state, I should say. That also included a little more progression on the Edgemere playground in terms of design services for that particular playground. All right, next slide. Finally, we're going to go to historic preservation. Here, you'll see some checkboxes changed. We can acquire historic preservation, we can preserve it, and we can rehabilitate and or restore it. Next slide. Here again, definitions from, now this actually gets very specific from the CPA legislation, so I'm going to read this. It says the following is listed on the state, these things, we're going to talk about them, buildings or documents, artifacts, structures, real property, and vessels They need to be listed on the State Register of Historic Places or determined by the local Historic Preservation Commission to be significant in the history, archaeology, architecture, or culture of the town. So here we have a very specific definition. This is to make sure that we are dealing with historical items that are deemed as such. They have to be in some registers that a body of that authority has reviewed that item to make sure that it is historic, and that's how they become historic and become eligible for CPA funding. Next slide, please. Again, here's a couple of examples in our community that were passed some time ago. First was in the Mountain View Cemetery, the historic section, to be very specific. There's a number of gravestones, a lot of the gravestones there have been in deteriorating manner. So some of them, as you can see in the picture there, there's headstones that have fallen over, they're broken, and so this effort is to bring the stones that have fallen over, reset them into a proper base so that they can remain standing. This is to fix the existing stones. I want to be clarified, this is not going to replace stones, because that is a stipulation about using CPA monies, is it's not to recreate something, because you cannot create a historic item. It needs to be a historic item. And so speaking of historic items, our next project down below is a 1926 American LaFrance fire engine, which through the generosity of a former Shrewsbury resident, and this person took interest in this fire truck that came from Shrewsbury. I think if I'm reading it from here, it's either the second or the third fire engine in Shrewsbury ever, mechanical engine. Fire apparatus, that they've held on to it for a number of years. They've approached the town to say, hey, this is something that I have, and would you be interested in taking it back? But the stipulation is that we all want to see this fire engine be restored, preserved, and enjoyed by the community. And so through that generosity, through connections here, some folks in this room and other parts of town hall made this, and the fire department made this happen, and it was a great project for our town. Moving on to the next slide. And finally, our last pillar is community housing. Here, all the verbs of what we can fund are lit up here. So we can acquire community housing, we can create it, we can preserve it. We can support it, that's a new one, that's the only allowable in community housing, and then rehabilitating and restoring it. Next slide. Okay, we're gonna go into how CPA is defined, community housing. So housing, it's housing for low-income individuals and families and low to moderate income seniors. And there's a matrix about what defines low-income individuals and low to moderate-income individuals. If you're interested in this space, certainly that's something you can approach the planning department in terms of more details about that. Next is, with those monies, we could support programs such as loans, rental assistance, grants, security deposits, interest rate write-downs. And this is, of course, in addition to the actual physical structure of creating community housing, like apartments or townhouses or single-family units to support families, eligible families. Okay. Notice I did not have a slide, or we did not have a slide on projects in that space, because at the time of this presentation, we don't have any community housing projects, but thankfully there is something that we're hopefully would be part of next year's presentation. So with that, we're going to get into how to request project funding. And so, next slide, thank you. And this one, I need to go to paper. So this is, I'm just going to read off the top headings. This presentation will be made available on our website, and I'm just walking through what an approval process looks like. So again, just hitting the top highlights. First, it all begins with a project idea, and that becomes formalized. And the project ideas are brought up by you, members of the public. Of course, it can be brought up by town departments, but the idea here, especially with CPA being created, is at the state level, is that these ideas are generated by the community. Okay. With that, with your ideas, you're going to fill out a couple of forms that the CPC makes available on the website. The first thing we're going to do is check to see if your project is even eligible for CPA funds. So in the slides that I've had prior, I talked about creating, acquiring, preserving, restoring, et cetera, and where those things intersect in terms of the projects. They're open space, recreation, et cetera. So we will check to make sure that it's even eligible based on just simple legislation, what is allowable and not allowable. After that, if we say it is eligible, you go forward. We're going to ask you to do a funding application review. So you have a form that's even further detailed, give us information about your project, more details about the scope of it, who your partners, do you have approval if it happens to be on town land, do you have approval from the town in terms of like moving or discussing a project within that space, et cetera. So just more details. We'll get into the budgeting, how much it's going to cost, who the estimates come from, blah, blah, blah. After that, this body will review both of those, again, eligibility and funding applications. And then we will convene, hear from the public in terms of feedback on that proposal, and we will either make a recommendation or not recommendation in terms of that project proposal. And this body is required to review all CPA projects. So if we recommend it, then it goes to the next two steps, which is first, and this is part of the regular warrant making process for a town meeting, which is that the finance committee and the select board review all the warrant articles. But the nuance there is that those two committees and boards, they can weigh in on it to recommend or not recommend, but your project will go forward to town meeting if it gets past CPC, if it gets past this committee. And so finally, the warrant article is created and goes to town meeting, and then that's where CPC will present on your behalf. Certainly, town meeting members, 240 of them will weigh in on this project, and then it's up to them to decide whether to approve your project in full funding or reduced funding or no funding. So that is the approval process. And then this timeline here, and you see on screen, is an ideal timeline, though we do have a rolling submission process. This again, that would be an ideal path, timeline. So it starts off where CPC, which is us, will update the community preservation plan. So this meeting tonight, again, will be taking in your input in terms of the community preservation needs and opportunities in our community. We're going to hear that. We're going to bring that in along with other inputs from the people who submit. If they're not here tonight, we'll be hearing submissions electronically, and also through the committees that are represented here in this board, plus the select board, if they have any comment as well. And that'll feed into the process. We will be reviewing the plan and adding any updates to that from between now and summer. In early fall, we were hoping to hear and review eligibility submissions of your project proposals. Then in the wintertime, we'll be reviewing the applications themselves. And again, the next hop, which is after eligibility, we'll have the full application. And then in late winter, we'll be looking, the CPC will be prioritizing the projects and making recommendations. By the spring, which is now, for this current cycle, will be the Finance Committee and Select Board will be making their recommendations. And finally, we have our annual town meeting in May. So that's the regular timeline. Again, but we do have a rolling submission. So if you have something that's out of cycle, that's fine. Go ahead, submit it, and we'll walk through that. All right. So now, what can you do? Which is the next slide. Okay, so what can you do tonight? Certainly give you input if you're here in the audience, or if you're listening online or see this in recording, definitely send an email to planning@shrewsburyma.gov. And I think there's also if there was any other opportunities to submit online, that would have been communicated through the posting for this meeting, right? The agenda. And also, if you're not ready to submit one of these projects, certainly to walk away from this meeting considering to initiate a project. And also, I would like for you to think back on those past conversations you may have had over coffee with other fellow members in your community. Things like, that come to my mind at least, some of these conversation starters, like, remember when Shrewsbury used to have XYZ? Or, fundraising alone cannot solve for this problem. I wish Shrewsbury could just pay for X. Or wouldn't it be great if Shrewsbury had a blank? Or, I wish Shrewsbury had a place for seniors or teens or veterans to do XYZ. And then lastly, if only Shrewsbury had blank, I wouldn't have to drive to the town of blank, right? So certainly I think of that as I personally think about dog parks and say, I wouldn't have to drive here to go to that dog park. But anyways, so with that, the next slide is just closing out with how to keep informed. So at minimum, please ensure that you are connected to CPC by ensuring we get our communications about these meetings. We tend to meet monthly. Very rarely have we not met monthly. So you can just get get information, stay connected by going onto the town website, clicking on notifications, sign up, and then under Agenda Center, click on Community Preservation Committee and sign up for those emails. And then next slide, please. Again. And finally, open forum. So thank you for the time.
Thank you, Jason. So it's our hope by having this public forum tonight that some of you that have joined us, tell us what you think. What do you think Shrewsbury needs? What sort of projects would you'd like to see? Questions for us, how this works. Like Jason said, his presentation will be available online, but we're happy to answer questions today. But there is a microphone there. Anyone who would love to share with us, what do you think we should be looking at? If you could, please state your name before you begin to speak.
Yeah. Daniel Molina. I think it would be great if we could revamp the parking lot at Colstrom Forest. During the winter time, it's very sloped and it's very angled, and if you park a car there, it's almost guaranteed to slip and move around, and it's very hard to back out to the narrow street. People go around a blind corner. So if we could get maybe just a graveled in or leveled parking lot, maybe a little bit expanded, or some sort of way to get in and make it more easy for people to access. There's only 2 usable parking slots, maybe 3, and oftentimes there's more people wanting to hike there than are able to park. So it would be great if we could get a better parking there.
That's a terrific idea. Thank you, Daniel.
Thank you.
Any other ideas, thoughts, questions?
Sure. Good evening. My name is John Shabelli. I live at 38 Knowlton Ave, right around the corner from the post office. Thank you all who serve for your volunteering effort to the community. It's great. I've been following the committee since it was created. Went to the information session and tried to follow along. I sent an email a while ago, and it got lost in the shuffle, and it was too bad. And I think it was Chris McGoldrick who got it, and he got back to me months later, and I appreciated that. But, I think the act is a great thing, and I see some things around town that appear obvious to me. And I thought, well, maybe this would apply. For many years, we had a dog that we lost not too long ago, but when we had him, we walked just about every day down Maple Ave, and we would go to the foundation, and we walk in many places. Walking down Maple Ave, several times a week, I get a very close look at the stone wall in front of the foundation. And I'm not certain about the particulars in terms of town ownership or if UMass owns a portion of the foundation. But, I got thinking after walking by there that Maple Ave obviously is a busy street in town. It's a main arterial street. Lots of people go by there. It's a high-profile place. And for years, portions of the wall have been in disrepair. And again, I don't know if it's the town responsibility to take care of it, but I've often wondered, there's boulders that are missing. Some of them are, the mortar has come loose and they're right there. And there's a bunch of gaps if you ever walk along it. And then after the public safety building came online, the wall seemed to get extended, but it almost seems like the rocks and boulders were just placed there kind of haphazardly while the construction was going on. And some of the continuity when you come up Maple Ave from the stone wall where the fields end, the wall loses a portion of its continuity, if you will, for lack of a better term. So I thought, is this an ideal project to be considered under the Preservation Act? And I often thought, gee, I wish the town could repair it, and I understand everything has a cost. And if somebody did a cost analysis and it just was, prohibitive for 1 year, could a 3 or 4 year plan be put in place to just repair a portion of it a year at a time? And then again, I thought about the Community Preservation Act. So I sent that email, I sent along a bunch of pictures, I have a bunch of pictures, I'd be happy to send them again. And when the public forum was coming up, I thought, I should come down and just pass along that suggestion. So that's why I came down, and I hope that you'll take that into consideration. And, I haven't done anything more than that. And if it's incumbent upon the suggestor or the applicant to submit a formal proposal, I could do that, but my hope is I pass it along. I know that you have town resources here. It doesn't seem to me to be a real challenging issue, but I'm happy if you need some town input and you need somebody to be involved, I'm happy to participate a little bit. But again, I just wanted to pass that suggestion along to the board.
Thank you so much.
So I appreciate the opportunity.
I'm going to look closer at the wall when I go by it. Thank you so much for bringing that to our attention. We appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you.
I think it would be good to have, just to resend the email and pictures to, this way it gets to the
Yeah.
top of the mailbox and then part of this process.
Try to do that maybe when I go home.
Thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone else have anything they might like to share?
No. No.
Hi, my name is Fran Zaretti, of 625 South Street. I've been a real estate developer in town, and also I'm a PE engineer, and some of my colleagues on the board over here know who I am. And I'm basically semi-retired now, but I built a retirement community down by St. John's, Westwood Crossing, and I did some preservation on my farm on South Street. I put a 45-acre conservation restriction with Sudbury Valley trustees on half of my property. So I'm pretty familiar with real estate and land, but right now I'm kind of semi-retired. But I do get calls in the last year or so, people in town who have land who ask my advice on it, basically to do feasibility studies to see what the land could be used for, etc. Also, I've mentioned to them about, working with the town in open space. And some of these properties are significant in terms of value and also value to the town and financial value. So my question is, in making recommendations to these people, does this board have a priority in terms of recreation land, open space land, affordable housing, in terms of a hierarchy of what's your primary goals? Because land preservation, it should be up near the top, because once the land's developed, you can't preserve it anymore. You can always fix a park, you can always do something else in town, but if the land is gonna be going to the market to be developed, there's only one opportunity to try to preserve that property. I have the knowledge how to do that, but my question to this board, and probably to the town itself, is there a way to fund this in terms of beyond the monies that you have? Because obviously land is so expensive in town. If you're talking, large parcels of land, you're talking millions of dollars. So is there a cap on what can be done? Can there be bonds set aside? Can they have other monies available, borrowing money, whatever, if the land is of certain high priority to the town, that they would want that property versus it going to development? So I have a lot of people, not a lot of people, I have a few people that it falls into this category right now that I'm working with, and at some point I'd like to approach the town to show these properties and see what's involved, but I don't want to do that if in fact there's no mechanism there that could work with a project of this nature. So that was kind of my question in terms of
I believe other communities have found creative ways, and we're always looking at other communities of what they do with their CPC. We do have the ability to bond for certain projects. We are still relatively new, but we're trying to be nimble and jump on opportunities as they arise. Our priorities are set annually by meetings like this, folks telling us what's important in town. But I think Mr. McGoldrick would be the first person to talk to about, he knows of other resources that could be brought to bear as well. But CPC can be, there are things that we can do beyond our annual budget. We just haven't done it yet. Anymore, Jason's our expert with our coalition.
So definitely, I think the takeaway is that, yes, it can go, I mean, though you saw that we have $1 million budget per year, and that has to be spread across the other areas as well, we can bond, right? So that it is an opportunity. So if you're saying, the key message is, yes, there's a way.
Okay.
We just need a little lead time to go through that process, because we haven't done a bonding. And of course, any bonds have to go through several layers through town, and also through town meetings and et cetera, et cetera. So, but it is, and it's great. I'm glad to hear that you're here. You're talking to other members in our community that have interest in preserving their lands, potentially preserving their lands. And yeah, CPA is for open space. It is for outdoor recreation. Thank you for bringing that to our attention. But the key thing is that, if you can connect people to town, Chris, right, Mr. Goldrich, right, to start that conversation, that'd be great. And CPA is money's right for that opportunity, open space and recreation, two different ways. Also know that members that you're talking to, if they have a particular angle in which they would like to move forward on a project, whether think of it as, is it recreation, outdoor recreation, or open space protections, right? So I know some people will be more sensitive to, I don't want this to be turning into a track or something like that, So there are ways to make this protected further.
Right, I mean, I think, the conversations I've had is more passive recreation, not a stadium or something like that. And maybe a hybrid situation where if the town can't afford the property, maybe part of it's developed and part of it goes to the town versus the whole thing going to the town. There's different ways to do it, but it would be, the town would be interested, I can tell you that right now. I don't want to go any further because I can't.
Of course. I think a lot of folks that have been in Shrewsbury for a long time will know there's some really great parcels out there that just need a little nudging if they're ready to move forward with making an offer to the town and protecting it, right? So it's a win-win for the community going forward.
So Steve, you look like you've got
Yeah, Franny, thanks for coming in. Do you know, Mr. Molina, Vice Chair Molina, do you know if we have the ability to purchase, a conservation restriction where, like Mr. Zaretti said, that, it's more passive, where the owner remains in control, but the land kind of stays in its natural state, or are we constrained to only purchase property and fee?
That's an interesting question. I want to say that there probably is some project examples out there, certainly not in Shrewsbury yet, where we fund the restriction, the CR, conservation restriction. But I'm not sure right now about a project
Mrs.
disposal.
Zaretti did with the Sudbury Valley trustees.
Yeah.
That would be or we could even partner with potentially.
But I do want to say for sure that if the town were to purchase property using CPA funds, we have to have a CR on that. So it's to protect, it's not just it is a requirement.
Right.
that a CR is placed on that space to keep it in perpetuity. Yeah.
Right, when I did the CR on my property, I did it with Sudbury Valley trustees, and the only way it was eligible is that my property had to be a tributary to the Sowasco watershed, so it had to be part of the Sudbury, Assabet, and Concord rivers. So because I had my property in that, I was at the beginning of that whole stream that goes right out to Boston Harbor, by the way. I was eligible to do that, and then we did the conservation restriction. It took 3 years to do it and was quite involved, but, so you can put conservation restrictions on some land, but other lands have constraints. They have to meet certain criteria in order to do that. And sometimes you do it with the Conservation Commission, sometimes you do it to a nonprofit. There's different mechanisms, but it can be done if you want to do it that way.
Yes, absolutely.
May I just comment about, Carlstrom Forest is owned by the New England Forestry Foundation, which I believe holds the conservation restriction on that. And they are allowed to selectively log that and care for the property in
Yes.
that way. So it's not like it's untouchable.
It all depends what the covenant is.
Yeah, exactly.
what you
So
can and
there's
can't
various
do.
things you can
Some
do.
people, they have a lifetime estate. They want the property like that as long as they're living there. When they pass on, the town can do other things after they're gone, but, you know, that type of thing. So it's quite detailed depending on what person wants to do and what the town wants.
Thank you.
My question, I think, it's probably to Chris. I mean, you always hear a lot of conversation in town about open space. People keep saying, more open space, we want open space. Is there any, there's really no formal organization or something within the town that is looking to do open space? That's my impression anyway. Is any one organization within the town chartered to look for open space, even in find open space? It just kind of happens when someone like him comes forward and says, I want to put my property out there.
Yeah, so that's actually a project that our office has been tasked with, looking at both acquisition possibilities for affordable housing and for open space. So we're doing those efforts together, looking at both of those parcels. So, you know, we're evaluating currently, you know, vacant or underutilized properties, and trying to develop the criteria that will evaluate them for those two types.
Is that with town-owned property as opposed to private property?
So the interest is we're essentially doing a test run with town-owned property to fine-tune those criteria and make that we're using the GIS system to try and evaluate parcels. And once that formula and that criteria is developed, we'll be able to apply that town-wide. Some of those who have been on the Sudbury Valley Trust website, they have like a heat map that shows which parcels are, you know, really conducive to habitat preservation. So we're trying to do something similar for both open space and for affordable housing, to really show a heat map of, you know, where does it make sense to target parcels for, you know, housing or that, and then we would build on that acquisition policy. So we're still a long ways off, but that's something that we're looking at trying to develop currently. Yep.
Let me just say that the Trails Committee has always got an eye out for open space, and we'll mention it to the planning board.
And in the meantime, our office is always willing to you know, discuss with you know, private parties. We do it kind of regularly, whether it's open space preservation of their lot, you know, estate planning, or if it's you know, for development. We touch on both of those, and we're willing to kind of work through those concepts. There's a lot of resources that are available, not just CPA funding, but you know, we're happy to kind of go through that and really see how our office can support people achieving their goals with their property.
Thank you.
But at this point, the town doesn't really set aside any monies to purchase open space.
Not currently that I'm aware of.
If the property were in 61, it would give us a little bit of time to maybe go to town meeting, have a special meeting for an override. But you're right. Other than that, we react, you know.
Yeah.
We're not
Again, my thought process is if certain parcels of, well, the town owns a lot of property, you know, I think what Mo spearheaded something a while back, but beyond that, other pieces of property that might be available, is that something some organization should put together a list and potentially look at somehow funding. Get creative with funding.
I don't know, you think it even has to be the whole bundle of rights? It can just be, leave it in its current state, you own it, you deal with it, but you can't develop it any further.
Yeah.
You know, I go look at the ski mountain down the hill, and I say, you know, that's part of the New England antiquity, and if that gets developed, we lose it forever, and it'd be a sin, but it'd be nice to keep it a ski mountain, ski hill, or whatever they.
Thank you for starting that conversation, Mr. Sweaty. Yes?
Just to follow up with a question for the planning director, are there entities at the county level or the regional level that are focused or have a priority of tracking open space and connecting with people that want to preserve open space in one form or another? I would imagine at the Worcester County level and at the regional level, like in the Assabet region, that cross county lines, those entities and organizations, whether they're governmental or they're nonprofit, that they exist. I hope that the town of Shrewsbury has some sort of relationship with them already.
Correct, in putting, you know, with the governmental agencies, we have a lot of experience, you know, working especially through grants and other initiatives, and the non-governmental end of things, working with the land trusts, and, you know, and developing those proposals. Again, that's where we kind of, there isn't a real concise formula that we have right now. It's more kind of reactive, as was mentioned, but we are looking to shift that to be a little bit more proactive at the town level in pursuing those. We're still early stages in shifting that dynamic, but.
Well, I would just say from a homeowner's perspective and a taxpayer's perspective, I would hope that no opportunity goes by the board when somebody in town who owns a large share, you know, a sizable property, and a lot can happen to it. I would hate to learn later, like the gentleman said, there's one opportunity to develop the land, and if the town doesn't have an awareness about these opportunities, it would be a shame if those were missed. So I hope that, and I trust that the town is on top of all that. I think it's, you know, worthy of mention. Thank you.
It's certainly an area that we can explore more and have a much longer conversation on. I would say if any of the people you're talking to have a specific question, Chris McGoldrick, the planning office, is the place to start, especially if they need information right away. But we're happy to talk more about it if as they have more questions or a potential project comes along. What else? Any other questions? Graders? Yes, Deb.
Deb Delgado, 318 Spring Street. I don't really have a question. I just want to thank everybody on the committee for your dedication and your work, and the town of Shrewsbury, because we have so many projects that we have done, that if we didn't have your dedication and the funding that the town is giving us, we wouldn't have. And I also want to say thank you because the lightning arresters, the First Congregational Church, are completed. And I'm so happy for that because I just didn't want to have anything happen to that wonderful 300-year historical building that has happened to some other communities, as we know in Spencer and some other communities throughout New England. So they're installed, and thank you so much for supporting us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, that's good to know.
Are there any other thoughts, questions, ideas that anyone would like to share with us? We're really grateful that you came out. If you think of something at another time, by all means, that email that we say incessantly, planning@shrewsbury.ma.us, is a great place to start, and they won't get lost again, we hope. But that is a terrific place to start, as is following getting our agendas and anything that we put out by signing up with your email. So, if there isn't anything else, we can close the public hearing part.
Well, that's were there any submissions,
Oh, yes.
anybody online that requested online access?
None for the online access, but I will note that we do have a couple of survey responses that were received. Happy to see there's some engagement on that front as well. So we'll continue to monitor that while it's open.
Thank you.
All right. Is there anything else as part of the public forum? Then do we need a motion to close the public forum?
Yes.
Is there a motion to close the public forum?
So moved.
A second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? And we will close this portion of our 2025 public forum. Thank you for joining us. We truly appreciate it. And we'll move on to the next item on our agenda, which is to review and approve the minutes from our March meeting.
There are 2 typos I'd like to correct. Okay, under Article 6, Section E, where Deborah closed the public hearing, called for a motion to close it, not a notion. I don't know how I did that, but I guess the M and the N are close together on the keyboard. So that has to be corrected, and it is in my copy. And then under next steps, there's a typo. You just need a plan to update it, period, capital A, all relevant committees. Just a simple typo, and I didn't see anything else. Anybody else?
I'm going to recuse myself because I wasn't here.
Okay.
Is there a motion to approve the minutes with those typos corrected?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We have 1 abstention. All right, so next, review and sign bills, and we have bills.
We do. We have 1 bill this evening for the community advocate, $141.90, and that is related to the advertising for our public forum.
All right, is there any discussion around that bill or a motion to approve payment of that bill?
Make a motion that we pay the bill.
Second?
Second.
All in favor of paying our bill?
Aye.
Any opposed? We'll pay our bill. Now the staff report. Chris and Emma, you're up.
I do have a couple items I wanted to bring to the committee's attention. So first, on my drive in today, I noticed that one of our placemaking initiatives has been followed through on. So I want to take a brief kind of moment to highlight that. We did place some Shrewsbury colored tables and chairs out on the town commons. We've already seen some people using and enjoying those amenities, so that is part of our tactical urbanism approach. So we're going to leave that out for a period of time, and then we're going to take that away. But it's meant to spark some conversation, both about it being out, and then later hopefully about it being taken away if that's something that people want to see back in a more permanent way, or just to generally facilitate conversation around seating on the commons. But fear not, those items will then travel to a new location to spark similar conversation around seating and placemaking. So that's part of our initiative. We're happy to see that. Kind of, I think, a fun activity as the weather warms up. In other news, we did meet with the coalition members, introducing our new staff member, Emma, to them, and also took that opportunity to needle them with some burning questions that we had. So we had a very good conversation, a lot of that around the working group, which we'll be convening. So we'll have some updates for them, which will then make their way back to this committee. But I'll save that for the working group and discussion there. I also wanted to mention, thank you, Kathy, for using our online permitting. We have not really publicized it yet. It is live and usable, but Kathy was our first through kind of the test run of that online permitting system. So I think there's probably some fine tuning to be done, but you know, at least she made it through. So that's,
Yeah, I did. Yep.
So that's definitely a start, and I think we're well on our way to being able to use that that feature. I did mention that to the coalition, and they are looking at application procedures as a kind of spotlight. So they were actually really interested to hear how we were doing that, and they may be reaching out to our office to kind of discuss that in more detail and kind of push that out to some other communities as well. So definitely a success to make some progress on that. We'll have a more formal presentation for the board in the next couple meetings. And then finally, as part of this process, we'll be developing some formal recommendations, mainly around that online permitting and how that might work with our current process. So as part of the update of the community preservation plan, our office will develop some formal recommendations for the committee to consider in terms of updates to the plan and process. So,
Cool.
that's all I have.
Thank you. Any questions or comments for Chris's report? Then we'll move on to our first action item. We have a project eligibility application for the Elizabeth Gardens expansion. Kathy, if you'd like to speak to it at all?
This is the third step in the process to hopefully do some additional building down at Elizabeth Gardens. You may remember the Housing Authority took money out of their reserves to do an initial survey. So that was done this time, probably early 2024. And then the second step in the process was to do a conceptual design. So we did put together an eligibility application for that design. And it was approved by this body or deemed eligible by this body. But at the last minute, we opted to have Affordable Housing Trust pay for that. So this is really the first time that we're coming back to talk about some of the next steps. So the next thing that we need to do, it's a 6-step process. They don't have to be done in any particular order, but we need an existing conditions property survey, field testing, site clearing and engineering design, stormwater permit plans, traffic study, and the 6th is the stormwater general permit application. So all 6 of those, hopefully, I'm not sure what's in the packet, but hopefully everyone included in that was the detailed breakdown of what's gonna happen for each step. And the total is $86,000. And really what we wanted to do here is to determine, do all 6 of these meet the CPA eligibility requirements? So any questions you may have on that, I think they do in my opinion, but want to make sure that this body agrees. And the reason we wanted to have this conversation today was really to determine if there's an element that doesn't, then we need to go out and seek some funding from other sources, because all 6 of this would be required for us to get to our next stage in the process, which ultimately we hope would be build 22 affordable housing units at Elizabeth Gardens, would be 11 buildings, duplex style. Our hope is this becomes family housing, just because there's a shortage of that in town, but we're not even there yet. That's just sort of our pipe dream as we're talking about this. So I'm happy to take any questions that this body may have.
So as always, our first step is determining the eligibility. As Kathy said, there are 6 elements to it. Find all of them in one spot. In general, at first blush, this project sounds eligible to me. I'm trying to find all 6 pieces to look and see if there's anything else in there that might not be eligible. But we don't have to, what we determine the eligibility, we don't have to do it on the price or all the pieces.
And some pieces are over 10,000, so we'd be required, much like the town is, we would have to go out to bid on them. So it is just a quote. We didn't feel like we could, or an idea, an estimate. We didn't want to start quoting these things out if we didn't have at least a concept of where they'd come in price-wise.
So what do we think, folks? Questions for Kathy, comments?
Yep, questions. So thank you for bringing this proposal forward. Certainly, it's great to see something in the community housing space. We haven't seen that to date.
Well, you did, but.
Well, I mean, they've gone
Yep.
through here, so this is wonderful. And I want to just ask the obvious. I want to make sure that we ask the question.
Okay.
Which is, these units, will there be guaranteed that it's for low-income individuals or families, or low to moderate income seniors?
The property would be owned by the Housing Authority, and that's what the Housing Authority does. So yes, what our population will be, ideally, we're thinking families, but that hasn't been determined. The last project we did was on, we being the Housing Authority did, was on Ridge Road, and we partnered with the Department of Mental Health on that. So we only have a few of those units because the Department of Mental Health maintained part of it as part of funding. So that's why we're trying to keep this mostly within the Housing Authority and Affordable Housing Trust, which working with CPC, because we want to maintain that so it does stay with Shrewsbury families or Shrewsbury residents.
Okay. And so just for clarity, so that, no one has any other opinions on about it, but CPA does not specify who, like the residency of those folks. What the important part of it is the CPA is focusing on the affordability requirements, eligibility, right?
Which everything the Housing Authority owns is affordable housing. Now, I will say the process, this would be, Shrewsbury Housing Authority we're unique in Shrewsbury in that we have federal housing, which is the towers, and then everything else is state funded, so now that the acronym's different, EOHLC, which used to be DHCD, now is the department that oversees this. The process for someone to get into housing is through the CHAMPS program. It's a state-run program. It's statewide. So there could be people that come from other communities in Shrewsbury. We have no way on a state program to restrict to just from Shrewsbury. That's not an element. So I just want to be clear about that.
All right. And I also want to comment on that is that because if this were to continue on to next phases where you create the properties using CPA monies, if we go down that path, it then becomes eligible for rehabilitation or restoration later on down the road, 20, 30 years from now when maintenance is, restoration or rehabilitation are required. So,
Yes, because the Housing Authority will be responsible for regular maintenance in conjunction with EOHLC.
awesome. And certainly CPA does look to encourage that communities focus in on the 80% AMI or lower. So that's another element to this. Yeah, just so they can be so if you maintain it, even though CPA you can get to 100 AMI, but then you don't get the credit on the housing,
Right, the SLI.
Yes.
Yep.
All right, so,
And our other properties do count towards that on Shrewsbury.
awesome. This is great. I personally don't see anything, all these line items are all for the support of creation of these units.
Yep.
Right? Okay. There's nothing external to this that is from some other project? Is any of this supporting, I'm just asking the obvious, but I want to just make sure we ask the question. Yeah, are any of these line items supporting other buildings?
No,
Okay, so purely for this new
Yep.
new construction, new project?
yes.
Okay, then I don't see any reason, I don't see any red flags relative to eligibility.
Good.
I guess the question I kind of have is, let's assume we go forward with this. The next step is to somehow get money to build the units. Where does that money come from?
That's another thing that we're working with. We might come back here and ask for money for theirs. We're thinking if we do 11 buildings, 22 units, that'll have to be phased in. So we'll have to do, whether it's a couple a year, so mostly through the Commonwealth. We're working with several different sources there. So our executive director is working on this part. She's working on that part to see where we can get funding from
So
other.
there's money from the state,
Yes.
potentially.
Potentially, there's money from the state. We've been told that there's grants available that we can apply for, and that's what she's working on.
Now, the grants from the state, is that state money? Or maybe
We're
you don't
worried
even
about
know.
it going away also.
Yeah, okay. So I mean, from the federal standpoint, who knows? right now?
Exactly, yep. And that's why it's a phase. Like, I see this project, I don't think any of us will still be on this committee when we get all 22 buildings, or 22 properties in, but at least if we can get a couple.
I guess the funding for the $86,000, the prep work on the $86,000, once everything passes, how long is it good for? I guess if.
Oh, I see, like the traffic study, how long is it good for?
Yeah, or the field testing, okay?
I-
Perk testing, all of that. Is that good for 1 year, 5 years, 10 years?
I don't know. I'll have to get the answer for you.
Okay. The only concern I have is if we do this, and not that we shouldn't, but if we do this and then all of a sudden no money's available, and we go down the road 5 or 10 years, I suspect they're gonna say, oh, you gotta do it again. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, because code changes even, so something that they do based on standards now could be very different next year, but one would hope they would use the basis for this study to build on the next one.
That wouldn't cost as much.
Okay.
So our first question is this eligible?
I believe
Yes or
it
no?
is. I mean, you
Would you
can't-
like to make a motion to that?
Okay, I make a motion that, well, to approve the eligibility for funding for the Shrewsbury Housing Authority request for
Elizabeth Gardens expansion.
Elizabeth Gardens.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor of deeming this eligible, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? The project is eligible. Step one, done.
Good, thank you.
So, and at the same time, they have submitted, pardon?
Nothing. I'm just mimicking her, that's all.
I hear things. We have deemed it eligible, so we can then consider the project funding application, which is also included in our drive for tonight.
That is basically the same thing I just said, all over again. One comment I will make, just as a little bit aside, the delay in getting this was really for us to get the general quote from a contractor, so we had a number to put forward. So that's what we're waiting for. So once I had that, I could do both at the same time. What would have been nice if the eligibility application was just a total conceptual thing and there was no price point on it, because then I could have done this for you months ago. It was the dollar value I was waiting for. So just a suggestion going forward, that I don't really think we need to have pricing for eligibility, because that should be, does it meet the requirements? So anyway, I did submit it because now I have it. I've submitted it twice. I submitted it on paper on our form, and I submitted it online as well. I think it doesn't quite align with the application we developed, but it's pretty close, and I think that could be tweaked. But, you know, kind of the same thing I said before, it's $86,000, and I think everyone has the application. I feel they're kind of redundant as well, the eligibility and the funding, but again, it's $86,000. And I think most of the questions are the same, but if there's something that someone wants to ask, I'm happy to do my best to respond.
Are there any questions about this project? I know we've been, I think when we developed eligibility and funding, we thought that there would be more space between the two, but it said the point about not having the money with just the concept is probably something. Next month, we will tear apart the application a little more. That process has begun, but we won't do it tonight. But for this one, for the funding, what do we think?
I guess the question is, we want to vote on the funding. If we approve that, does that mean it'll make it into the May town meeting?
No, and we have to have a public hearing on it as well.
Okay, just,
So it would be fall town meeting?
okay. You're looking for a motion?
Okay.
I'll make a motion that we approve the funding for the engineering plans for the proposed 40B project for the Shrewsbury Housing Authority's property located at 11 Elizabeth Street.
Is there a second?
Second.
Got all that, Melanie?
got
I was going slow so you could write it down.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Then we will recommend funding of this at, not this town meeting, but the next town meeting.
Thank you. And we have our meeting, Housing Authority meeting tomorrow, so I will let them know that we're moving forward. I'll get some answers, general answers on how long some of these things are good for, as you asked. It's a good question. And then let you know, I should be able to give an update next month on what our next steps are at the Housing Authority.
Excellent.
That's a
Thank you.
question.
Yes.
And it doesn't impact the decision we just took. But I wanted to ask if the affordable housing, if you have any plans, Kathy, to bring this also to the Affordable Housing Trust for conversation?
We, their next meeting is on the 16th, and I've been invited to attend to discuss this specific project.
Awesome.
All right. Next on the agenda is apparently there's a request to approve an extension on the District 5 schoolhouse. Tell us a little
Correct,
more
yes,
about
we
that.
received an extension request. I think the letter is pretty self-evident as to the reasoning, so due to the volume of work, the consultant has reached back out, the consultant that was working on this has reached back out and is asking for some additional time to complete this study. So we are nearing the extension deadline, but per our funding agreements, we can extend those by a positive vote of the board, of the committee to extend that. I would recommend a one-year extension. We can always come back to it if additional time is needed, but I think we need much less than that 1 year, so.
Any thoughts or questions?
I think that's reasonable.
I guess the only question I
Accept it.
have is, in the thing you handed out tonight, is the project lists the 1830 schoolhouse for $65,000. Is that the project they're talking about? Which
This-
project are we talking about, I guess?
Is it 55,000?
Let me make sure, because there's two of them. So this is the, this is the feasibility study for $5,000.
Okay. So it's the $5,000 one.
Correct.
Is there a motion to approve extending the agreement with the historic, regarding the historic schoolhouse?
I make a motion to approve the extension on the District 5 schoolhouse funding of $5,000 for a period of 1 year.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Yes, we'll extend that for 1 year. Next, we have vote to recommend our draft warrant articles for the select board. These are also in the drive.
We have a new one, right?
Sorry?
Is that what you passed out? Is that the new thing? you
Yeah,
passed
so
out?
I also, in support of this, might make it a little easier to kind of follow along. We have our memo that typically, a draft memo that typically memorializes the vote of the committee. So I know that was edited and brought to you just this afternoon. But on page, if you kind of go through some of the kind of background on the CPC, where we get to the projects, we can go in order. So we have those specific amounts. So Article 33 is for the budgetary allocations. Those are based on our current projections, as you know, given the information that we have at this stage. We also have Article 34, which is the Arrowwood Park. Article 35, which is the ledger restoration. Article 36, which is the Prospect Park ADA accessibility. And Article 37, the Jordan Pond multi-use trail design match. So in each of those, we have kind of the breakdown of the appropriation account that we recommend, as well as the dollar amount and the type of CPC work that's typically mentioned. So those three items together typically are what we vote on and present. There is some, in that memo, some flavor language to give some background context to each of those articles. We also do have draft motions that have been developed, but are not included here. Those will be finalized by the select board as they move through their process.
So I have one question on Article 34, the appropriation account. You say undesignated, but in our budget, we refer to that as budgeted reserve. I think we should use one term for when we talk about the undesignated funds or the remaining reserve, just so that it's clear.
Thank you. The correct should be the undesignated, so I will make that correction.
Okay.
Within the appendix,
It does say that.
I just have a question on, you have something on the last page with FCC trim restoration, FCC architectural study. One of those didn't get approved, right?
Yes, that was the trim restoration, so that will be removed.
Okay.
Sorry, I didn't
No.
take that out for you.
And I guess I have a follow-on question about, when I look at annual administration fund, one page back, 2 pages back, I don't know, are we supposed to vote on these things? Right? You got supplies for $300, whatever, but then you have $5,000, right, for FY '25 budget for supplies?
Yes, so that's, the $5,000, those are kind of estimated amounts are. So again, the actuals typically trend much lower than that, but we're just trying to show in the budget some flow of money, that we're expecting that,
Some money to come out of it.
right, in the FY '25, again, it's gonna be lower, the actuals will be lower. The bump there that we were showing was we were accounting for, the CPC signs that went out to the projects that year, so.
Okay.
That's why that was kind of shown as substantially more, but, I don't think we came close to the 5,000 for those.
Okay, and does this reflect the $90,000 that came back from the basketball courts at Dean Park?
So it doesn't currently, so this is accounting for that all is allocated. So as we get into the next item on our agenda, I'll go over some of those. how
Okay,
we're
well,
gonna-
like a dog with a bone, that's my bone, all right?
Yep, I've got some updates, yep.
Can
John.
in the Appendix A, just as a point of information, you still show FY '24 as budget. Shouldn't that be actual?
Yeah, so I think in the email, I said that, I'm still working on updating those for the actuals. So I do have those figures, but I don't have it reflected in the memo before the board. I'll try to get that before the memo is issued, but.
Okay.
Are there any other questions, comments?
One thing, can I just ask if you've heard from, I guess it's Mass Trails or CMRPC about your application for grant money for Jordan Pond?
So we haven't yet, and unfortunately, we won't receive, they typically don't respond to those grants until after town meeting. And so that was why we kind of structured our request. We do have the grant submitted and applied for. We are all also asking for, that amount. So we're hoping that we'll hear about that.
Okay, we'll just have to wait.
Yeah.
I know how it is. It's like waiting for Christmas.
Yeah.
Give you all another minute to looking through it.
I like this sheet, Chris. That column right
That's-
there.
That's next.
Are there any other corrections, comments, questions about the draft warrant articles? Should we approval?
Question though.
We got another.
Oh, yeah. So the appropriation accounts, is that been multiple eyes on that we're good on in terms of like the language and where it's placed and?
Yeah, so that was part of, what we originally, in our earlier proposal, we were proposing to split the Arrowwood into the undesignated and the open space. That presents a number of complexities, again, with some money coming back from other items and from, the way our kind of budget goes versus the actuals in accounting. We're still working on fine tuning that to have a really much more accurate of what the actual numbers are, down to a higher accuracy level. We're getting there, we're just not quite there, so as a measure of safety, that's why we are asking for that change to put Arrowwood for the full undesignated. I think in subsequent rounds, we'll be able to kind of drill down a little bit deeper on that amount, but we just don't want to delay any project if there's, a couple $1,000s that are off, so.
I guess the question I have then is if we take money out of undesignated, because we're not sure if we got money in the open space, when the money comes available, and maybe Jason knows the answer, are we allowed to then, after the fact, take the money and transfer it to undesignated?
No, and it's the logistics of writing the motion language before the budget can get refined enough. That's the kind of challenge that we're learning of how to fine tune that a little bit.
No, I understand that. We vote on it at the town meeting, then let's use the basketball, then the money comes back after the fact. Can we turn around, let's assume I use 100,000 out of open space and 500,000 out of undesignated. Now the 90,000 comes back after the fact. That means we would have had more money. Can we turn around and take the 90,000 by a vote of this body and move it to undesignated from the open space?
Or is it a ratio between the two?
No,
No.
no.
So, since it's an appropriation, we are not able to amend those funds after the fact. It has to be that specific dollar amount from the specific account. And that's what presents that challenge as we kind of figure out how to make sure that we're drilling down deeply into those reserve accounts.
Can't we designate in the warrant article how, if there was any monies coming back, where they would go? Just as a catch-all?
That's kind of my question, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know the, my only concern is that if we take money out of the undesignated account, and then all of a sudden I get money back in the open space, now I get a lot of money in the open space that I have to use for open space, as opposed to it going to the undesignated account, that could maybe go to housing or something, when it should have come out of the open space in the first place.
Yeah,
But we don't have the answer on the give back at this point.
And so I think in subsequent rounds, we'll be able to do more logistics like that and have a higher confidence in something like that. Just as of right now, again, trying to, make sure that we are safe for these projects. We don't want to rock it too much, but, what I would say is I am projecting a surplus in open space, given that we're pushing the 200,000 to the undesignated, but we've regularly received those open space applications, and I do anticipate we'll see more, so I anticipate that to be a highly used account. It's, yeah.
Go ahead, you wanna go
Well, to
first?
John's point, I think it's going to be important for you to articulate that clearly at town meeting and at Finance Committee, because last round, I remember there were some comments about why are we funding things from a particular area that have to come out of the undesignated. We should only be using that money that's designated. So we know that we have the versatility to use it from both funds, but it's important that the audience needs to know that we can take it from the undesignated as well.
Why don't we just have a language and let town council say it's inappropriate and it's excised, that any unexpended funds be returned to the undesignated
Yeah.
account?
Yeah, I mean, I guess what kind of bothers me, it sounds like we're leaving open-ended. How- You know, you identify open space and undesignated. We're leaving it open-ended as to how much money's coming out of each one.
So that's in order to provide clarity, what we're doing, what our proposal is to, rather than splitting it, where we had 200 from the undesignated and 400 from the undesignated and 200 from the open space reserves, we're asking to just shift it to 600 from the undesignated. So the full arrow would amount from the undesignated rather than splitting it between the two accounts.
See, I disagree with that. I can't vote for that.
I do too.
I can't vote for that. I mean, you guys can do what you want, but I'll tell you how I'm gonna vote on that one.
Why wouldn't we just do it 400 from one and 200 the other? What's the rationale for not doing it that way? Because to me, it doesn't seem cleaner. It seems more diluted.
So again, by drilling down into, by splitting the accounts that we're doing and having those specific amounts, you know, we want to make sure that we're not drilling down too far into the account when we say 200,000 from that amount, from that account. If it's, you know, at the end of the day, if we collect less in taxes or less in the surcharge, or if the match is less and we wind up with 180, we have to come back to town meeting to fund that project. By doing it all in undesignated, we know that we have that amount. We know that the project can move forward. We have more than enough funds in that account. Again, as we get a little bit more fine-tuned in our actual accounting and projections for the upcoming years, we'll be able to get closer to that amount. But for this time, for the time being, we're recommending that we just take from the undesignated for.
But if we vote on it tonight, that means all 600,000 comes out of the undesignated.
If town meeting approves it that way, correct?
Is that the way it's gonna go to the town meeting?
That's our recommendation this evening.
But I think that's what we can decide tonight.
We have to decide it by tonight?
So we do have to put forth that recommendation if, you know, if we're able to work that out in town meeting. So select board does not have the ability to change the motion or the accounts after we've recommended them, but we can amend it on town meeting floor if we're able to figure out some of those logistics closer to town meeting.
When's
But
town meeting, the 15th,
19,
19th? Is there a selectmen's meeting before?
yeah, there's a number of select board meetings.
Yeah, we're not meeting.
And we have one meeting a week before that.
We meet May 5th, right?
No, May
The
12th,
12th.
so it's only a week before.
Doesn't the article itself say that you're taking it from both places? 600,000 from the community preservation open space and undesignated reserve for the purpose of ... I mean, isn't it really just the appropriation account
We could.
should be amended to say both?
Well, the description's written like that, but Chris is pointing out an issue here and trying to keep it clean. And obviously hearing members speak about,
So you get 90.
you know, not taking it from undesignated. I'm wondering here, Chris, is there an opportunity here to remove the risk by going with, based on the balance of that's actually there today?
Right.
Like, the accounting knows that you have, these are the receipts you have. You have, 75%, roughly 75% of the actuals are in now, right? Base it on what's there now. And just leave, so shift the quarter that's remaining that we don't know, cause it's estimates, and just say, all right, that's gonna go into undesignated.
So the account balance as of today is 63,000, which is why we're proposing it to all come from the undesignated, because one of the projects is 53,000. So again, that drills down very deeply into what we know we have in the account as of today. But again, we need to revise that to make sure, because it wouldn't have.
The project you just referenced, the 53,000, is
That's the
that,
Jordan Pond multi-use trail.
they're already But that's gonna come out of new monies, going into the pot. Yeah.
So again, that's why I am projecting a surplus, but in terms of the actuals and that, still working that out with accounting.
Can't we say so much is needed from the open space and undesignated, but in any event, no more, not to exceed $600,000? That way, we have some flexibility.
Is really the issue about if there's money left over, where it comes back to, not so much where we're pulling it from. I mean, right? So, we need that question resolved.
Don't we always want it coming back to undesignated, so we have the
Exactly.
flexibility?
Exactly.
Any unexpended funds are returned to the undesignated account.
Well, maybe the account it was drawn from.
I don't know
Right.
if you can do that.
Why?
I don't know.
So
Look at
They
the
vote
play-
on it,
So
you
the-
can do anything.
We voted on the playground. We took 375 out of what, undesignated on the playground? I wasn't here when you voted the playground. But if-
I don't think we
let's-
ever look at where the money's
let's make-
coming from.
Here's my question. If the 375 for the playground came out of the open space, then what's left over, my understanding, has to go back to open space. If you voted the money to come out of one account, the leftovers can't go back to another account.
Well,
It
right.
has to come back to the same
It
account.
should go back to the account it was pulled from.
Yes.
And that's all we're looking for, right? That language.
But isn't the part of the reason we're doing this is because the basketball, the 90,000 isn't in the account it's supposed to be in?
It's not there yet.
Right, and why isn't it there? I mean, that's, I guess, another question. Where is it, and why isn't it back in this
Well,
account?
I guess well, does it come back to where did the money for the basketball court come from to begin with?
Right.
Was that undesignated, or was it?
So the money for the basketball account is so they get separated out into separate project accounts, and it's there. And as we get to the next item,
Okay.
we'll be recommending to return that. So that would then, at town meeting, as part of our budget process, it would come back
And where does
into the account.
does
So
it go back into open space, or does it go back into undesignated?
the account that it was originally appropriated from, which in the basketball court.
I feel like we talk about this every month, and the money's not.
It was from the open spaces reserve, so it'll go back to the open space.
So then we have,
reserve
so
account.
then we would have 153,000 in that account, right? Because you said there was 63 and this would be 90,
No,
no?
I don't think so. I mean, on the sheet here, he's got $222,000 in the account, counting next year's budget.
I mean, it's the same thing that would happen based on this sheet, right? With this remaining balance, right? Where there's $7,400 going back from historic, 28.5 going back to historic. You know, I guess it works both ways, right? Look, I'm not looking for the 95 to come back to recreation. I just want it reflected somewhere that it doesn't get lost
Right.
somewhere else in the general budget. I want it to
So
stay
it's
within
not
us.
gonna get lost in the general
Yes.
budget. I
No,
have it,
no.
I have the account number, I have it all written
No,
out
I-
right
I-
in that
I-
item here.
I got
And I just, it's there. And
Yeah.
and the recommendation is to close the project out and return the funds, which we were gonna get to in the next item and discussion items.
If I may just make one comment. We got into a lot of trouble because we insisted on writing our own warrant article, if you'll recall. I think we should just leave this to Chris. You know, you've got the big picture. I'm okay with that.
I'd like to ask John and Kathy, what is the concern that you have about using the undesignated reserve for the full funding of Everwood?
Well, my concern is if I take all 600,000, when I've got 300,000 in the open space to start with. Now the open space has less money. If housing comes by next year and says, we want something, that's $300,000 less we can give them out of the undesignated account. Because now we've got extra money stuck in the open space account.
All right. And is there a safe value that we can use that it doesn't get any issue here? Because you have the prior balance, and I know that's based on this year's estimates. You mentioned, I think, something about 60,000 thereabouts?
Correct, so we have 63,000 in the account as of today. I'm projecting to have 108,000 if our estimates are accurate, if the state match is accurate. Again, introducing those ifs that
Yeah.
create the uncertainty that we're trying to avoid. So if that is, then I'm projecting that we'll have 222,000 in the account. Then on top of that, if we bring in the 95,000, that would be an additional 95,000. But again, that's based on those ifs.
Yeah.
And there's some, we wanted to make sure that we were clear with this project, especially given the interest in bringing this to town meeting. We want to make sure that we're very clear, very simple with it. And then as we kind of refine these reporting and refine our abilities to really drill down those projections to a closer amount, we're a little apprehensive of using those projected figures
Sure.
just yet.
Okay, so let me further to that question then, right, to try to bridge the gap. So, if we were to go forward with the $60,000 of undesignated, is that a safe number, given you have a balance of 63?
Sure, but then
I'll
we would
go
have-
further. So then if we do that, is $60,000 worth to even entertain?
I think Melanie made a good point. This is what you do, not what we do, so, but I wish that we could be a little bit, like, can't we say a combination of open space and undisclosed, or
Unrestricted.
undesignated? And that way, once you've done your accounting, then you make the appropriate, or does it have to be in the warrant where the money's coming from?
So the motion has to specify the specific number and the specific
Okay,
account. So we have to recommend that motion, and again, town meeting can change that if we want to try and present that. But again, in order to keep the simplicity,
Right.
we're asking just to do the undesignated.
If I'm looking at this correctly, this says that Dean Park came out of the undesignated reserves anyway, so any money would be returned to the undesignated reserves. It's on Appendix A, financials. Dean Park basketball court is listed under the general budget reserve, the undesignated. When you list appropriations, those are under that category. So if we took that money from there to begin with, the
I'm
excess
fine.
would be returned there as well.
But it seems like everything is out of undesignated there, right? Camp One Lake Street, lightning arrest, gravestone restoration.
Okay, I mean, maybe that's just something as a takeaway, right? Just to cross-check what was approved at town meeting relative to these projects and put them in their appropriate account. And that doesn't sound like we're gonna solve that tonight, but that's not something for us to decide anyway, right? So I think
Yeah.
I'm recommending we don't try to get into that weeds of it, but obviously, Mr. Rich has this action item anyway, normally, to go to town meeting in preparation for that.
Well, are we able to, amongst ourselves, this body, say in the end, like we talked about here, say this $95,000 for the basketball court? Are we able to say if they need to put it for their accounting reasons into open space? Can we move it somewhere else? Can we move it to undesignated? This body?
No, so it will, as a matter of essentially law, move back to the whichever one it was appropriated to originally. You can, if you wanted to, you can appropriate through this budget, you can recommend a town meeting appropriate from new funds coming in, separate amounts, separate from the 10% that's required, but.
Greater than, not less than.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm trying.
So-
I'm trying.
Okay, so I mean, there's two different things here. One is the money is going back. I think that's the next agenda item, right? Chris is gonna talk about. But can we close out on whether we're moving forward with the undesignated as 100% for Arrowwood? Because the safe number is sort of, my words, the safe number that I'm hearing is 60,000, right? Under 63, and then for that, is that even worth it?
When you say 60,000,
So, Mr. Goldrich
So
mentioned
it's
there was
left in the-
63,000 in the account right now, known.
I mean, I gotta
Not-
question that too. I believe that's incorrect. Based on this here, it says there's 166,000 in the account.
Projections.
Yeah, 'cause
It's all, it's based on projections. I haven't updated the FY '24 to actuals.
Okay, I'll give you that, projections. But you should have 9 months of actuals already. Well, in terms of money being put in. In this report you got from Munis that says there's only 55,000 in there, I don't know how you reconcile it. I don't know how it says $55,000. Something's missing from there. That 55 should be a bigger number.
Which,
The 55 you said is in the account now.
63.
65.
65?
Well, I don't wait to get to
Let
65.
me, I'll go back to the email.
Because the Munis report you sent me says 55,000.
Do you have something in front of you that's
That I think
specifying?
Bill's got, yeah, I think so.
Okay. Okay, all right, so even more so, John,
Well,
does that
I'm
mean that
sorry.
we should take the advice right now and just say 100% of Arrowwood goes from the undesignated because, to your point, it's even less than. See, this going with your figure, is it worth the squeeze out 50,000 out of the open space budget? That's the safe number. I hear the
Using that
concern.
logic,
I agree with,
yes,
I agree with you that we should,
yes.
I would love to see that we're spending the money out of the appropriate account.
Yeah.
So that we're not inadvertently affecting another opportunity in another cycle.
Yeah.
I totally agree with you
See,
on that.
what bothers me, though, is all this information's laying there. The accounting department, as the money comes in, it goes in, it gets booked the day it's received, maybe within a week, okay? But it seems like we're 9 months behind in the reports, okay? The money's there somewhere. But finding it, or I should say finding it, putting it in its appropriate place on the reporting has become an issue with me, because it's like, it's a moving target, and it's 6 to 9 months late.
Now, Chris, you had said
So let's-
there are some numbers you're reconciling that we might
Exactly.
have.
Let's move into the next item. So as we talk about the quarterly reporting that we've been discussing, what our office would like to do is to fine tune that process to cut down and get a more accurate number than 6 to 9 months, 12 months
Yep.
of accuracy. We're working on that process currently. I'm not gonna sit here this evening and say that we have it fine tuned, that I can, with the accuracy that the accounting department has, tell you what it is. I can ask them what are in the account as of today. But again, as we rectify our reporting numbers, we're trying to make that a little bit more manageable, more accessible than some of the Munis reports that are not really accessible to the public, accessible to people who are not generally working in Munis all the time. So we're trying to boil that down and get our reporting accurate with Munis, and that does take some time. Currently, that is quite a bit of a lead time. I completely agree with that. I commiserate with that. We're trying to fine tune that and bring that to a more accurate level. I don't have that this evening. So that feeds back into this, what we're recommending for bringing that to town meeting, is that we want to make sure that we are not misstepping with that accuracy on projected figures for FY '26 until we can get better accuracy. So that's why we're asking for all of Arrowwood to come from the undesignated reserve.
It would seem that based on the information that's available right now, today, when we have to make a decision, that that's the best course of action, but you are making progress towards more timely, more detailed reports. We're just not there yet. So, yes.
I just want to say I appreciate the effort that you're putting to get this all in order. But I think we do still have to understand that it makes it very difficult for this body to make decisions based on information that may not be up to date or accurate, because we really don't know. So this has been an ongoing problem, and I'm uncomfortable with it, but I understand the situation we're in, so hopefully going forward, this situation won't happen again, that we'll have accurate information, accurate numbers, so we can make the most appropriate decisions for this body to make, because it's really difficult not knowing the numbers and having to flip things around from fund to fund. It's not the way I would like to do business, but I understand the situation. And I'm curious if this is an issue that happens with other CPC boards, or is this just something that because we're, finding our way through this whole procedure and learning the ropes? Just a comment.
So I just really want to make clear, I have a high level of confidence in the accuracy of the budget as it's been presented. I also have a high level of confidence in the accuracy of accounting's figures as they're showing them. What's not shown in our reporting, but does show up in accounting, is encumbrances, bills to be paid. They don't take into account projections. So marrying what accounting's reporting is with how we do our budget, and typically the CPC wants to have us do our budget, is not one for one. And we're trying to make that process talk more accurately. And at this stage, we're not there. I think in several months, we'll have a very high level of accuracy between those two processes.
I just say, any financial information you get is a snapshot of a moment in time, and things can change awfully fast. We can ask for accurate numbers all we want, but, they may be totally different tomorrow. So I think we just have to have faith in the system, that we have money, we're gonna spend money, it's all gonna work out. No,
That's accurate.
that's not a financial person's take, but,
But
a person,
it's okay to take it from undesignated when there's money in open space.
I'm not worried about that. It's all CPC money,
It is.
yeah.
But then, and again, I keep referencing the housing, because the only time that somebody's gonna come for $1 million, if housing comes for a bunch of money, they may not be able to get it, because we took money out of the wrong account. The undesignated is gonna get depleted.
Housing's probably gonna ask for a lot, and we're gonna have to have special arrangements anyway, right? I'm not gonna worry about it.
Okay?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a couple $100,000 in the grand scheme of things. I know, it sounds crazy, it sounds irresponsible, but
But this is where, like, that's what accounting does, right? But it's like for us to say, look, we've allocated the 10% this year for open space, fine. Where accounting pulls the money from, or why can't we just amongst ourselves move it back? That's what I don't understand, right? It seems like an easy thing. It's a little general ledger entry, boom, boom, 2 lines.
That's my question.
the allocations are
Transfer
happening.
from account to account, in
Yeah.
effect. We can't move money back into open space.
No, I would be going the other way. I would say, this 600,000, we've taken enough out of open space allocation, we've met that goal. Then the remainder should go, whatever comes back should go back to undesignated.
I just
So-
don't understand why you just don't have a catch-all in the warrant article that says any unexpended funds are returned to undesignated.
Yeah,
And it gives us the authority to do it.
So Department of Revenue guides how money is transferred. That's not our business.
town meeting is the one that appropriates the money.
But in terms of like how monies come back and forth and come out, get used into these accounts, I mean, the Department of Revenue has a whole 77-page document, 75-page document about how monies are managed, right? And that is based on CPA Chapter 44B, right? Which created these accounts to begin with, and the requirement about the 10% per these three buckets plus the administrative, et cetera, et cetera. I think we're wading in territory here that's beyond the knowledge of the rest of the committee. I don't think we should be just, discussing that piece at this point. I think that the question at the table here is whether move forward with undesignated allocation for Arrowwood. I'm not diminishing at all your concern, John, in terms of my words. I agree with you. I disagree, Melanie, that I think it's important that we do use those reserves according to the projects in which we prioritize. Other communities use these buckets in very strategic ways to ensure that they're spending money in that space. For example, our community could be focusing on one of these categories primarily. Like the gentleman that came in earlier, if we wanted to focus in on open space, then we could be allocating greater than 10%. And we really would want to just only be, tapping that for those projects and leaving room for other projects, like community housing, right, as an example. So it is strategic to take the monies from the account that's best suited for that project. So I agree with you, and I'm disagreeing that it is important that we do take monies as they are. Again, my words. But I think we should take off the table here about monies and transferring and
Sure,
why
that's
we
fine.
give ourselves abilities. I think that's DOR, that's 44B, we don't have any state in that.
Okay.
So, do you need a motion in terms of, Chris, do you need a motion to change the language for the warrant article?
So what I would be asking for is, on each of these articles, a motion to approve or to recommend the amount, the appropriation account, and the CPC work type for each of these articles to be presented to town meeting.
You need a separate motion for each one? Or do-
I think, that's where, nice vote is what you're looking for, in favor.
I'd prefer a separate motion for each one.
But to clarify, when we get to 34, you also need a text change too, right? And that's in the description?
Correct. So, and I apologize for that. Yeah, so if we just voted as the kind of snapshots at the bottom, if I missed anything up in the project description, I'm happy to amend that to reflect the vote of the committee.
Okay.
Are there any questions about any of the other articles listed in this memo? Arrowwood has two Ws.
It does.
It's silly, but it
Yeah.
does.
Arrowwood.
We blame Mr. Zaretti, because he was one of the developers of that.
Yeah, what he said.
Are there any other edits or corrections? We can, as Chris said, take them one by one.
So, in Article 33, you got state matching funds projected at 21%. I guess the question is 20% of what?
What we collect, isn't it?
Right.
What's collected?
Chris, is that with guidance from the coalition?
That was a copy-paste error, so the numbers
high to me.
reflected, so I was using the previous memo to edit the projected amount, which was in the budget addendum. We are projecting those much lower, given the declining state match. We projected at believe it's 15% for this year.
And that's based on,
Of the 946,100, which is our projection of the local surcharge revenues. So projection of a projection.
okay. I mean, it all works out in mathematically year over year anyway, but is it normally of the current year you're going into or the prior year actuals that's paid out?
So updating the actuals within the budget, as we've done it, is still the FY '25 budget, because we don't have those actuals yet. That feeds into the FY '26 estimates. The revenues are an estimate based, the assessor's calculation based on historical revenues, and then we do our best to project a state match of that. So again, we have seen those declining, I believe. So last year's was 21%. So we're projecting, to be conservative, a 15% match. Likely to be higher, but again, we want to make sure that we're being conservative.
Are there any other questions or corrections for Article 33? We had two changes for Article 33. One was correcting the state matching fund projection to 15%, and then in the table to label the bright blue section undesignated reserve, so that it matches the language we use in the other articles.
That would be right here on the, like that?
Yeah, that
Desi-
would be undesignated reserve.
Undesignated.
So we use the same title for everything. Are there any other questions or comments about Article 33? If not, is there a motion to
Well,
approve Article?
If you change the math here, you're gonna change the math of the appropriations, right?
So
breakdown.
the 21% doesn't affect, the figures are correct.
Oh, okay, it is.
That was just a reference. Our
Oh, okay.
last year's was 21.02. I
Okay.
neglected to reflect the current projected amount of 15%.
I move that we recommend Article 33 with the two text changes as explained by the chair to town meeting.
Second.
All in favor of approving Article 33 with those two corrections?
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it. Okay, Article 34. So we had edits of adding the extra W to Arrowwood, and in the text to appropriate $600,000 from the Community Preservation Undesignated Reserve. Are there any other corrections, comments, clarifications? There are none. Is there a motion to approve Article 34 with those two corrections?
I move that we recommend Article 34 with the two text changes as explained by the chair to town meeting.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions? That one passes. Article 35, the ledger restoration. Are there any corrections, additions, changes? How about a motion to recommend that one?
Second. I make a recommendation that we move forward as printed.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Article 35. Article 36, the Prospect Park ADA accessibility. there any corrections, comments? If there are none, is there a motion to recommend this one as written?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And also passes. And Article 37, the Jordan Pond Multi-Use Trail Design. Any other edits, corrections?
I move that we recommend Article 37 as written to town meeting.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, warrant articles have been recommended. It's discussion items. Do we have any left? Is there anything, Chris had said that they are getting, is there anything you want more that you feel that's being said about moving towards project process or quarterly budget report?
No, so, I do just want to briefly just touch on this, document that we've prepared. This is still a draft. We have been working to make sure that those are accurate to the budget and with the accounting's, reporting. So again, that's part of where we're trying to marry this process of what accounting has. The request from the committee was to have a very clear idea of, on each project, amounts that have been appropriated with the expended funds, and a remaining balance, as well as the project status. So we've created this framework. So I'm going to present it because for some reason, the printed version reformats a little bit.
That's
But we will start presenting these reports quarterly to the committee. These will be a piece of that quarterly report. On top of this, we're going to have each of the project status reports. So we'll be a little bit more aggressive than we have been in pursuing formal updates of that. May include an actual form to make it easy for applicants just to fill out where they are in it. But again, tracking that kind of amount. So as we can see, a number of those projects are complete. We're splitting it between active projects versus closed out projects, which are no longer in the accounting system. A number of these have been fully expended. The account still exists, but there's no money in them, or it's otherwise encumbered to be closed out at the end of the year. So we'll be recommending each of those be moved to that closed out projects that allow us to kind of just look back as well and say, how many projects have we done and what amounts. So we'll keep those as kind of an artifact of funding that we've completed, projects that we've completed that we could always look back on as well. It's an important data point, but the active project will reflect anything that has active money in it or an account that is active in the accounting system. Highlighted in orange here are reflected balances for projects that have been completed.
Prospect Park Pergola is complete. That was the study which shared that there was nothing more we could do.
Correct, and so in that
So
account.
that 28,500
Correct,
should be returned.
28,500. So that's where we're highlighting those in orange and bold. I don't know if we'll kind of specifically do that each time, but just to show that, this sheet will give us a quick glance of, what's complete that still has a remaining balance that should be returned. And that way we can be a little bit more proactive of closing these projects out, not waiting until the end of the year when accounting does that normally for their process. We can be a little more proactive and just, close accounts or return funds as it's no longer necessary for those specific projects. Again, this is a draft. It's really, I wanted to have some feedback on the framework of this, if this is usable, if there's a better way. I don't need the answers this evening, but I just wanted to put this before the board as a discussion item of how we can better report. We're also adding those pending projects. Happy to use that space if it's, for right now, we're just reflecting what was before the committee for town meeting, but if we want to look at upcoming projects like Elizabeth Gardens, things like that are, pending, we can add those in as well so the committee can track those as well and where they are in their status.
It's a nice start, very nice start.
Yeah, helps a lot.
Yeah, well, can
Yes.
I want to take 2 minutes to give everybody an accounting lesson, okay? We keep talking about accounting and accounting doing this and accounting doing that. Accounting does nothing more than post information given to it by everybody else. All accounting does is, when they add up all the pluses and minuses, it's got to add up to zero. If it doesn't add up to zero, then the accounting people have a problem. They're going to find it. In the meantime, when tax revenue comes in on a daily basis, the treasurer tells the accountant, put the tax revenue in account X, Y, and Z. So account X is the preservation fund. Then the preservation fund, there is what's called a subledger. There are 4 separate accounts, which is the open space, et cetera, et cetera. Now you've got money in 4 accounts that total the account. Then within the 4 sub-accounts, the accounting people then break that out by every project so they can keep track of every particular project. But they can't do anything unless other people tell them how much money and what money to put into those accounts. And that's where we're behind. In all fairness to Chris, when we started a lot of this process, he was understaffed. He's just getting caught up to being staffed. But the point is, we got to get, use the basketball court. That project hasn't been closed. It's been done for what, a year now, maybe? The point being is, we got to get the information into the sub-ledger so we can close the account, okay? And then your balances become more correct. At the grand total level, yeah, as soon as the treasurer gets the tax bill and they put the money in, it gets put in daily, because I've gotten a copy of that account in the past. It gets put into the account daily. There's transactions daily. But all the accounting people know is somebody told me to put $1 million in account X. After that, they have to start telling them to put it in the sub-accounts and then in the sub-accounts. Accounting doesn't do any of that. That's the responsibility of the people handling all of that information. And that's where we got to get caught up. That's simple as that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We're getting caught up, right?
Well,
We're getting caught up. Now that he's got, I guess, I'll use the word appropriate help, it should happen.
We have great hopes for you, Emma. No pressure.
Not to put any pressure on somebody.
We'll have her doing a lot more than just accounting, but it is my hope that this document will do just that we can say when a new project comes online, we're making sure we're being diligent and saying, accounting put this amount that was appropriated into that account. They're very proactive for that, for us, but again, we want to make sure that we're being able to be more proactive where we need to be, where we've been seeing money literally left on the table is in this back end of where we know a project is closed out, and just making sure that we are taking that money and bringing it back to the accounts that it should be put back into. So I think this will accomplish that and make it a little bit more proactive in that way, and it will give the committee the ability to see the status of those projects much quicker than logging into Munis. So.
Thank you. Is there anything else on the topic of reports or budgets? Okay. So next month, yes, Jason.
Yeah, so I think also just reviewing the expiration dates, because either the schoolhouse folks thought it was May 2025, or they're incorrect and it's June 30th, 2025. I think just crossing that off, because it's one of these is incorrect.
extended it for a year, right?
Yeah, it's just from what month did we approve on the paper you signed?
So it would be from the funding agreement,
Agreement, yeah.
generally, I think those are, the June, I think, or,
It's the July
it's
one.
from, we backdate it to the specific, town meeting date. So, but we'll factor, so again, we've kind of been throwing this together.
Yeah, no,
You
it's
know, I know it
yeah.
came late, so that's why I
Yep.
reference it as a draft. We'll definitely fine
Thank
tune
you.
some of that, yep.
All right. So next month, our meeting has been moved from May 7th to May 12th, and it will be at the police station in the training room again. So mark your calendars for that. Next month, we'll have some, if you have time, that you'd like to look at our current application. Some of us have gone through it and we think there's some room for improvement on the paper one, and that would obviously be reflected in the online application as well. But we need to think of that. If you have had a meeting with your respective committee or will be having one, if there's feedback of what their priorities are for the year ahead, please plan to share that with us. We got some nice feedback tonight, but we can always use more. Is there anything else folks can think of?
Yes. The select board have the notice gone to them to solicit feedback?
Yes.
It is, and I'm coordinating getting an agenda with them to
Okay.
do the community.
Chris did reach out to the statutory committees, or whichever ones we're supposed to talk to. I know I said yes to a memo.
Okay.
So
So May, we should be reviewing the heat.
we sh-
all
hopefully
the input,
be,
right?
we should be reviewing that.
Okay.
And Chris and I and Emma will meet a couple weeks prior to that, so just a couple weeks from now, to start to go over the agenda. So if there's something, you think of something else, that we'll be looking at the heat map, looking at our priorities and our plans for the year ahead. If you, we just got Diane, hopefully the rest of you will join us. But if you know your plans for next year, let us know as well. And other than that, there's nothing else. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So move.
Motion to adjourn.
Second?
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? That concludes our April 7th meeting.